Okay, we're up to Siv Tesh. Okay, let's see how far we can get today, but maybe we'll finish it. I'm not sure. We'll see. Yachid, this is a very interesting halacha, very practical, because this comes up in a lot of cases. Look at your neighbor, please. Siv Tesh says like this: Yachid ha'imar slichos. When you have a individual, meaning a person who's davening by himself, okay, so he's not with a minion, and he's saying slichos. The halacha is einay rashai loimer shloish esrei midos. Number one, he's not allowed to say the shloish esrei midos. Hashem karacham mechanun. If he's doing it derech tefila ubakasha, if he's doing it in a way of davening. One of the reasons is, or the main reason is, because this is what's called a davar shebektusha. Davar shebektusha, like Kaddish, like Kedusha, you only do when you have a minion. And over here, you don't have a minion. So if you're doing it in a way of tefillah bakasha, it's a problem. Why did he say derech tefillah bakasha? Because it's also in the Torah. It's a pasuk, yeah? So if you're reading it in the Torah, it's not an issue. The issue is when you're doing it in a way of davening. So what do? So the Kitzur brings a solution which is brought in the Shulchan Aruch, which is Ella derech kriya b'Torah. You could do it if you're doing it in a way of reading from the Torah, which would mean b'nigun if you do it with the tune, or b'taimim, and with the special taimim with the trap. Now, so this is very interesting. You get up to Shlosh Mides, according to the Kitzur, and which is based on the Shulchan Aruch, I believe, you're allowed to do it with this tune. Now, what happened was someone wrote to the Rebbe about this also. And the Rebbe's response was, so over there was a little bit, okay, so the Rebbe's response was that lo shamanu mizeh, that I never heard of this. Now, what does that mean? Because I think it's in Shulchan Aruch, if I'm not mistaken. So there's two different opinions of what this means. Yeah, one opinion was that that the Rebbe was basically saying this is not our minhag, that we don't do this. Not everyone, this is not something everyone has to do. If you don't have a minyan, you don't do it. So that's what some people say. Other people say, no, it was a question about the difference between Shachris and Mincha, if you say it with a minyan. So the Rebbe was saying, I never heard there's a difference between Shachris or Mincha. But that's another way of looking at it. A third way of looking at it is that the Rebbe was basically saying, that I never heard of our minhag being one way or the other way. So do what it says in Shulchan Aruch, which would be that you do say it with a tune. So you have different opinions, and if you ask different people, you'll hear different things. So I don't have an answer for you. You can ask your father, whatever your minhag is, ask your local rabbi, whatever the community minhag is. It sounds like some people do it with the tune. I've heard some people that don't do it with the tune. So Azai, I don't know what to tell you. It could be either way. So this has been a gea to the Yud Gimel Midas. The idea with the Yud Gimel Midas is because it's the Davar Shebektusha. There's another issue that you also have, which is like this. In the place also where it mentions the Shleish Esrei Midos, so that, for example, it's not the actual Shleish Esrei Midos. You're not actually saying the Yud Gimel Midos, but you're mentioning it. So there also, Kadema Yesh the Daleg also would be the same thing, that you should skip it over if you don't have a minyan. Now, so that would be number one. Number one is all about Yud Gimel Midos, the two steps, either the Yud Gimel Midos themselves or anywhere where it's mentioned. Then he continues and he says, the same thing would be in davening itself, you have, or in the slichus rather, you have certain parts of the slichus that have to do with, that they're said in Lashon Arami. For example, if you go through the slichus, there's something called mache or maseh, which is basically, if you reading the words, you could tell that it's not Lashon HaKodesh, yeah? Now, some of the Lashon HaKodesh and slichus and things like that is hard to understand because it's a little bit, sometimes it's poems or things like that, or so it's hard to, it's not your standard Lashon HaKodesh, but you also have things that have to do with Lashon Arami. So over here also, or Maran di Vishmaya, things like that. So then, Lo Yomreim Ela Ba'asara, over there also you shouldn't say if you don't have a minyan. So this is, and that's something that comes up. Sometimes you're davening and you're not davening with a minyan, so you'd be skipping some of these things if it's in Aramaic. Now, what happens if you start with the minyan? Let's say that the minyan's ahead of you or behind you. So if they're middle of slichus and you're just, let's say, earlier or later, you could still say it. It seems like. But if they're not, if you start with a minyan and then you came late and they're already finishing slichas and then everyone walks away and there's no minyan, so then it looks like you can't. You shouldn't be able to say it. Okay, so we're going through that part a little quickly. There's probably more to it. It's a little, but I think we could leave it for now. Sif Yud. Avel Asur Latzes mi beisay lelechas lebeis hakneses leimar slichas. And Avel, meaning within Shiva, he shouldn't leave his home to go to Shul to say slichas. Milvad be'erev Rosh Hashanah, except for erev Rosh Hashanah, shemar b'mislichas, where you say a lot of slichas. So then he should go. I saw another interesting. Also, this comes up a few times. That what happens if you have, let's say, a chazan, sorry, not a chazan, a chasen. So you have a chasen in shul. So now, usually you don't say tachnon. So what do you do about slichus? So you do say slichus, you just don't say the tachnun part. Yeah, you have the Lekenu B'Kavasenu, and then until Mashiach, that 2-3 paragraphs. So that part you would skip, but the rest of it you would say during this time. It's possible the chassan himself does not say slichus. I don't remember exactly offhand. So if you're getting married during that time, call me then. Fine. Sif Yud Aleph. Okay, this is a little bit of a separate thing, but it's also some parts of this are relevant to you guys as well. So let's do Sifir Aleph like this. When you have the Chazan who's going to be davening, leading the tzibur during Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, also the guy is going to blow the shofar. So for them, there's halacha of tzrichin lifresh as atzman shleisha yam lefnei Rosh Hashanah mikol davar hamevi lidei tuma. They should separate themselves for 3 days before from anything that could cause them to become tameh. Again, I don't know if that's mamish follow till today because we don't have it to that degree that we're so careful about these things, but it's an interesting perspective. And here's the important part. They should learn to the best of their abilities the explanation of the davening that they're going to be doing, the piyutim and also the piyutim, which are also, like I mentioned, they're very uncommon words. And for those that are blowing the shofar, or the guy that's going to be the makri, to learn the halachis of tkiyos as well. Now here you have a very interesting thing before we go further. And this is something that the Rebbe in any letter close to Rosh Hashanah would write to anyone who is supposed to be Chazan. He would write the same thing. That you know for sure what my father and Lafidik Rebbe explained, that you're supposed to learn the Pirush HaMiles before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, even if you learned it the year before, to go it over and to learn it again this year. Now, not all of you will be Chazan this year. Maybe some of you will. But for sure you're going to be davening, I hope, right? And in that davening is going to be tefillos that you're not so familiar with. So this was something I believe that I think remember seeing a letter about this also that the Rebbe wrote to Bachram as well, really to anyone, but to Bachram, that they should prepare by going over the Pirush HaMiles before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So Rosh Hashanah is not such a big deal; it's not that much, and some of them the first and second day are the same. But if you have the ability to get an English machzor before and go through it, it's very interesting. Some things that you have no clue until now what they're talking about. You get to learn that a lot of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur of the davenings has to do a lot with the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and how Hashem answered them, and Hashem should answer us. And there's this idea of Rosh Hashanah. We're not going to do that. But the idea of Rosh Hashanah is that you want to be able to go back to the connection that Hashem had with the Yidden in the beginning and before Averis and things like that to reconnect. So it's a very, very important thing. It's not the biggest deal. My suggestion to you is to take a master that you will be using if you have your own. And if it's not an English Hebrew one, then to maybe write a few notes. I have in my machzerim that I use. Either I have an English one since I become rabbi, so now I have whatever. But the ones before, I would write small notes to remind me, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, or different things that can remind you different taichin if you need here or there. That helps you with the understanding of what you're davening, because it's important. Like we said yesterday, or rather the first day, that we started learning that Elul, one of the Rosh Hashanah we said has to do with what we said was Rinas Deidim. Yeah, it's a song of people who love each other. And what that means is that you're not just saying words that have no meaning to you. You're actually saying things that are part of a relationship. You want to talk to Hashem. You want to have a relationship to Hashem. So it's important to know what you're saying in order to be able to connect with it more. Okay, so that's something that's very important, and especially if any of you will be chazanim. So some of you guys, your parents maybe are shulchim, or maybe not this year, but maybe some of you guys in the future will go and help shulchim, and you'll be chazanim. So it's a very important, especially if you're a shliach tzibur, to know what you're saying, because people in the tzibur, not always do they know, and then it's your job to kind of pull them along with you and your kavanas. Okay, good. Weiter. There's also an inyan that you should be learning. Here he says Musar, but the same thing would be Chassidus, obviously, that awakens a person to the concepts of Rosh Hashanah. The Yiru mipachad Hashem, and they should recognize with awe that they're standing from the fear of Hashem, and from the great splendor of Hashem. When Hashem is sort of in a position to be a shefet, which is what's happening on Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, you want to get into the right thing. Obviously, that would be Chassidus. Now, if you look in the bottom, there's a little test there. So he says, the Frierdiker Rebbe will tell people that they should learn the mimer that's called Lahavan Inyan Tkiya Shofar, that's in the Siddur Imdach. Siddur Imdach is a Siddur from the Alter Rebbe that has Chassidus in it, so it's a very fat Siddur because it has a lot of mimer basically. And part of that is that when it comes to Tkiya Shofar, there's a mimer called Lahavan Inyan Tkiya Shofar. I believe they put it in all the Machzedim in the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, the first couple of pages. And more recently, I've seen that they write like an AI style, so it's not actually AI, but someone went and learned it obviously a couple of times, and he wrote a condensed version. So if you can't learn the whole thing, at least to learn the smaller version before. Now again, that's really for the Tekeah. I don't know if everyone listening has to. There's plenty of Maimarim that you can get busy with to get you excited and to get you understanding what the idea of Rosh Hashanah is. It's important to get into that zone. Otherwise, it comes and goes without you realizing what's happening. Fine. Also, by the way, there are some things now that people take for granted, which is really from Chassidus. The whole idea of, let's say, Melech B'Sadeh, which you see very often now, that's all from Chassidus. That whole concept of being Machtir, the Melech, and what we do on Rosh Hashanah, that's all from Chassidus. So it's very important that we recognize what's really happening, and it's not just the Yira of Yamim Noiraim, which means the days of awe. It's not just days of awe because we're afraid of being punished. There's also a beautiful inyan to the idea that we're accepting Hashem as King. Okay, but we'll leave that for your mashpiyim to talk about that. Fine. Weiter. What happens if you can't find a Baal Tekiah that has the quality that we mentioned of being a Baal Torah? So again, like we sort of said, you have to figure out what's the most your level of priority when it comes to choosing someone. So Yiru al Kalpanim Shia Makri Baal Torah. In this case, specifically for the Baal Tekiah, so besides for, let's say, Chazan, you need someone heartfelt and everything like that. When it comes to Baal Tekiah, you first have to know the halachas. Like I mentioned, there was a guy that was sitting in shul that would get a lot of excitement. Like, you know, when the Baal Tekiah, whenever, and 770, probably in a lot of shuls, when they could find and the Baal Tekiah does something wrong. So in real shuls, not in like Chabad Hazard, but in real shuls where sometimes the Baal Tekiah makes a mistake, everyone gets very excited. It's mamash yamtiv. Everyone jumps at him and who found it first, and they correct him, and it becomes a very big joyous occasion. So I think there's even a song about that, right? The song about the Taivas of a Yid, and one of them is that you correct the Chazan first, or something about Kedah or whatever. Anyways, the point is that, but over here you have another Inyan also. Over here the Inyan is, you first have to know the halacha, and we're going to get to, when we come to halachas of Rosh Hashanah, we'll go through it, I'll bring a shofar, and we'll blow it the way our minig is, just so we see what's going on over here. Okay, so good, everyone should learn it, because you guys are all going to go on Mitzrayim, and you have to know, you have to blow a kosher blast, right? So what happens if the guy who's blowing the shofar doesn't know the halachas? That's a big issue because he could be making a mistake without realizing and disqualify the whole thing. So let's say you don't have a Baal Tekiah who knows the halachas. So the halacha would be Yira Kopanim Sheyeh Hamakri Baal Torah. So then at least the guy who's sitting next to him and who's pointing, by us he points, yeah. By them we'll see, we'll get to there soon. But by then the guy actually sort of prompts him. Right? He tells him when the next one is. And which is a very famous thing, by the way. People come to shul, they haven't been to shul in 50, 60 years. But as soon as you pull out a shofar, the first thing they'll say is Turkey. They get like very excited about it. So but we don't do that. We have a guy pointing. But it's the same thing. Someone has to know the halacha. Yeah. Why? Hey, Baki b'hilchas kiyah shofar. Uses the word Baki. You should be very familiar with the halachas. Because if a mistake will happen, someone has to know what to do. You make a mistake, do you just redo it, or do you have to start the line again, or do you have to start the whole paragraph again? There's different rules in how and what types of mistakes you make. So therefore, he also has to know how to look at the shofar to see if it's kosher. I think it wasn't last year, it was a couple of years ago, the Tzemach Tzedek shofar, which is a little black shofar they had in 770. And they used all the years, they had a split and they had to stop using it. Became possible. So, and it happened. Someone actually sent me a picture. I have to answer him. I forgot that he had a shofar that had a crack in a part of it. He wanted to know if it's kosher to use. It's not so common. Usually when the shofar is that old, people are getting new ones. It doesn't blow as well. But it didn't, Amalda didn't have access to so many shofars. There's a famous story about a bacher. I think it's actually my great uncle, where he found a shofar, a head of a ram in communist Russia, and then he came back and it was lost, and he missed it, and then he found it. It was a miracle. They had it, and this was like, I think in the middle of the summer, the beginning of the summer, and they saved it and they prepared it and they had it for them. So then it used to be a real challenge to make sure you have a shofar for Rosh Hashanah. But nowadays it's not such a big challenge. So you don't always have this as often. It breaks, you get a new one pretty much. at some around, usually. But it could happen. You went somewhere, you traveled somewhere, you went to run a minion in a prison or something, and you have one shofar. By the time you get there, the guy threw your suitcase when he was putting it on the plane, and it smashed it, it broke it. It happens. So you have to know the halacha, what you do in that case if it's kosher. And here he's saying, what happens if it's the day of? You wake up Rosh Hashanah, you don't have options, you can't do anything. What do you do now? So you should know the halacha. Again, the guy who's sitting next to the Balkira, at least the Baltekeya, at least he should know the halacha of what to do in such a case. Okay, Yud Beis. Many people have the minig that they fast during the Aseret Yimei Tshuva. We spoke about this a few days ago. Well, because you're going to be missing 4 days, like we said before, that you're not allowed to fast. The Hainu, which would be Shnei Yamim Shoresh Hashanah, Shabbos, Ve'erev Yom Kippurim. So therefore, which is what we said, that's why we do slichas with a minimum of 4 days. But here also, Al-Kain, for those that want to fast, dafka 10 days, misanin tumurasa, they'll fast instead of those 4 days, arba yamim b'mei slichas, 4 days, during the days that you'll say slichas shekudim Rosh Hashanah. So this year, it won't be mamish 4 days. Some years it could be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that's it. And Rosh Hashanah is Thursday. Okay, whatever, we'll see. We're not into fasting, but for those that would, yeah, they would do it. They would, yeah. The Hainu Yom Rishon is slichas. What would it look like? It would be, let's say, for them, the first day is slichas, the Erev Rosh Hashanah, and then Erev Rosh Hashanah also, for each Shnei Yamim in time, and then they would choose any 2 days in between. If you could, like this year, for example, you have over a week and a couple of days for Rosh Hashanah, so Boichadim b'yem Sheni v'Chamishi. So you should do the first day, Erev Rosh Hashanah, and Sheni and Chamishi. We made a lamb sudas mitzvah, but what happens if you have some sort of sudas mitzvah, a bris, a pidyon abem? So it's okay, you could eat whatever day it was that you chose. You didn't know you were going to have a sudas mitzvah. And you'll fast another day instead. It's not a big deal. Or if you know in advance that there's going to be, for example, a pidyon abem, it doesn't spring up on you all of a sudden, you know it's coming up. So then, so again, you could fast another day instead, and it's all good. Again, our minhag is not so much that we fast. We know that we'll see soon about the Rebbe, about Erev Rosh Hashanah, but for sure, in general, our derech, I guess you could say, is not really to fast. It's more to do other things. However, I will say that there was, in the year 1941, I believe it was, I think it was 1941, where the Frierdiker Rebbe, I think it was 41. But I think even a few years before, when the war was starting, World War II started right around now, Rosh Hashanah, I think. It started, or at least in Poland. That they attacked Poland, I think it was around Rosh Hashanah. And there's a whole story that the Bachrim were all there and how they left, and when they left, they stayed. So, but either way, then I think the Frierdiker Rebbe told Bachrim that they should do certain things. I think they fasted. There were a few different things. So, but that's not so common in our derech that we do that, and especially after the Rebbe was very not for fasting as a way of tshuva. It's better give tzedakah, better increase in other things. That's the more important thing. Fine, Sif Yud Gimel. Now this is something which is interesting. It's not it's a little hard to do sometimes, like we'll see, but it's something that's done. There is a meaning that Erev Rosh Hashanah people go after Shachris to Beis HaKvaris, the cemetery, and they do something that's called Lishtateach al Kivrei Tzadikim. The actual word Lishtateach al Kivrei Tzadikim means to prostrate yourself, which means to lie down on the Kivrei Tzadikim, which we don't really do today, but I have seen people that they climb into a cave and they lie on top. So we don't really do that, but the idea of to go to the Beis HaKvaris to visit, we'll see soon exactly what you're doing there. But people, this is something that we're still not till today. We try to go to the Oyel. The Rebbe used to go to the Oyel every Rosh Hashanah, and people also, they try to go. Now, obviously, not always do you have that opportunity, so fine. And while you're there, you give tzedakah. And you daven a lot. Now, why do you do that? So there's a few things. Number one, you're trying to awaken the tzaddikim that are buried in that area. What are you awakening them for? You're not davening to them, but rather, number one, what you want them to do is to intercede on our behalf. So you're going to the neshamas of tzaddikim, and you're asking if they could ask for us to have a bracha of a good year. That's number one. And number two, v'gam. By the way, this is a minig that starts from the earliest of times. We know the mashal in the Torah itself. It talks about it, that when the Meraglim were going to Eretz Yisrael, so Pinchas, it says what? So it says Pinchas went to Chavrin, and he went to daven by the Kivrei Tzadikim. Kalev, I'm sorry, Kalev. Kalev went to daven by the Kivrei Tzadikim in Hebron. So and Yeshua, I don't know if he actually went. I'm not sure because I think Moshe Rabbeinu gave him an extra name in his extra letter in his name, so maybe he was safe. But Kalev went. So you see that this is an old thing. This is not a new thing to go to Kivrei Tzadikim. And number two, the second reason why we go is because this is a place where tzaddikim are buried, and therefore hamakim hu kadosh v'tar, the place itself becomes a holy place, and therefore v'atfila mekubela sham b'yoser ladmas kodesh. So therefore, if you're davening in a place that's a holy place, so then it's the tefillah is more makubal in such a place. Yeah, why do people daven by the koisel, let's say, or by any other inspirational place? Because the tefillahs are accepted in holy spaces more easily in other places. Doesn't mean you can't daven, at home, or in a regular shul or anything. But there's a certain inyan that when a holier place, there's a smoother channel that our tefillah should be accepted. So you're not davening to the tzaddik. You're davening to the Eibishter in this place. And also Hashem, similar answers that Hashem will want to do chesed in the honor, in the schus of these tzaddikim. So these are 2 or 2.5 reasons of why it's a good thing to go there. However, don't think that you're going and you're asking them to save you, if you will. Because if you do, that's an Isur Midaraisa. That's called, we're in the middle of Yud Gimel. That's an Isur Deraisa called Deira Shel HaMesim, which is that you're asking people who have passed to help you. You can't, meaning to give you the answer of what you're needing. That you're not allowed to do. So, Yivakesh me'Hashem yisbarich. What you're asking from Hashem. That he should have mercy on you in the honor or in appreciation for the tzaddikim who are there. Okay, so that's the verse. Let's finish. There's more I want to do, but let's finish the paragraph and then we'll talk about it. We'll go through this part quickly because it's not so relevant. When you do come to this caver. So if you haven't been Beis Achayim within 30 days, so you make a bracha. It's in the Minor. That's number one. Number two, when you come to the actual caver, so we don't do this, but some people do this, which is Yesh Leimar. What they say is like this. They say number one, it should be the ratzon from Hashem that the resting of this plane, whoever it is that passed away, should be in an honorable way. And the schus of this person should stand in my stead. Okay, that's number one. Then, while you're there, you put your hand. That's in the future. Let's not bring the Barbison, yeah? Then you put your hand on the caver, right? We don't really do this, but again, there are those that do. You should put your left hand specifically, not your right hand. I forgot why. I don't remember. I looked it up. I don't remember exactly why. And you say a pasuk. What's the pasuk? Pasuk comes from Tanakh, where it says, Hashem should guide me always. And he should satisfy me with the splendor of his nefesh. In other words, I should have everything I need. And Hashem should give us strong bones. And I should be like a gan, like a garden that's satiated, that has water. And a place that gives water, that never runs out of water. So in other words, you're asking for brachas that you should have lots of brachas and have fulfillment in every area. And then you continue and you say Tishka b'shalom. This is, I guess you could say, a tefillah for the person who's buried there. Tishka b'shalom, they should rest in peace. Or they should lie in peace. V'tishan b'shalom, and they should rest in peace. Ad boi Menachem mashmiya shalom, until Menachem, which is a reference to Mashiach, will come and will bring peace, and that means obviously that there'll be tchiyas amesim. When you put your left hand, you should have the kavana of this pasuk of v'nachacha, sheyesh ba chamisha aser tevis. It has 15 words. And why do you have to connect the two? Kiminyan kishrei hayad, because you have 5 fingers, and each of your fingers have three joints. So that's 15. So you're referencing 15 joints of your finger together with the 15 words of this thing. So first of all, if you look right away in Yud Aleph, we'll go back to Yud. But if you look in Yud Aleph on the bottom, he says, our minig is that we just say whatever's written in the Minor Lashon. So you don't have to get so fancy with all of these things. There's a very, very beautiful tefillos if you want in the Minor Lashon. That's what we do. Now let's go back. Let's finish this sifra, then we'll go back to Yud. So let's just finish this last 2 lines here. Ein leilech al kever echad shtei pa'amim b'yem echad. There is a I won't call it a halacha because it's not. It comes from Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, I believe. I'm sorry, from Yehuda Chassid, who says that you're not supposed to go to one caver twice in one day. You go once, and when you're done, you leave, you don't go back. I believe when it comes to the oil, I think people do go back if they forgot something, but very often you'll see people don't. They come out and they forget something, and they give another little piece of paper to someone going in, and they say, could you give that in? I don't want to go back in. So you do see that. Also, this is something maybe some of you guys know already. It's there's a reason why I forgot why, but there could be a few things you don't want to bother them. I don't remember exactly what the vert is. But you go once and that's it. If you read the letters that are written on a matzeva, so this maybe you guys know. If it's a type of lettering that protrudes, it's something which causes forgetfulness, which is a negative thing in halacha. In other words, don't read. There's different types of matzevah. Some of them they chisel out stuff, which is the way we typically do it. The words are chiseled out, so that's fine. But then and in fact, I actually know someone who could tell you all the neighbors around the oil exactly, all their history because he reads the matzevah. So it's fine, people like that. But then you have other letters that they protrude. You see that sometimes where the letters are sticking out instead of chiseled in. Those are called kasher l'shikha. You shouldn't read them. I don't know why, beyond my pay grade, but there's something there. I don't know if it's halacha. No, it says you're not allowed to do it that way. It says you shouldn't read it. But again, we don't do it. So someone did, then you should say avaraba, which is avas olam. It's a different girsa. Fine. But okay, that's something else. Let's leave that to the side. Let's go back to Yud for a second, yeah? Yud, on the bottom, the page before, we have an interesting thing. He says like this, Minagenu, our minig is like this, that hanimtsoyim b'kedav makim, for people that are able to, because they're close, the minig is, that was the reason. This is from the Frierdiker Rebbe, where he's writing that the minig is that if people can, they try to go to the caver of the Rebbe. Everyone writes a pidyon nefesh. Now I don't want to get so into it, but there is a difference between a pan, what we call a pidyon nefesh, and a letter. They're two different things. But on Rosh Hashanah and other times, not always, but you write a pan, you write a pidyon nefesh. So over here before Rosh Hashanah, you actually write a pidyon nefesh. They have one from the Rebbe. They actually have a pidyon nefesh, a pan that the Rebbe himself wrote. Very interesting. Short, it's not so long, but it's very interesting. Anyways, and you write for yourself and for the people of your family, these barich, that you should be benched with a good gebenched yard. Now, what happens if you're not going to be able to travel to Kivrei Tzadikim? Let's say here, you live far away. So So what you try to do is you write a pan earlier and you send it that it should get there. So I assume nowadays if you do it online and they actually put it in, it probably works as well. I don't see why not. So maybe it's not the same as writing a letter. As we know, that Rebbe used to open up all the letters with his hands. He didn't want to have a thing opener. The secretaries tried to buy in, and he said, "People seal it with tears. How can we open it with a envelope opener?" So there is an inyan of writing it, yourself. But okay, not always you have that opportunity. Now this itself, by the way, how do we know this? There was a letter that the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote to Chatzah Fagin, who was one of the secretaries of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Very, very big chassid who was killed by the Nazis, I believe. So over there, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that he was very busy because there was a lot of panim that came from Russia. So I think this was probably when the Frierdiker was in Europe, meaning in Riga or wherever it was, that he was saying that there's a lot of panim that are coming from Russia. The whole year, obviously, it's good. Oh no! So then the story was, I think that they would write the whole year, but it was hard for them to send it. But Erev Rosh Hashanah, they would make an effort to send it, even though it's a little dangerous. They would send it anyway. So if you could, that's a good thing to do, is to send it somehow before, or at least if you can, to write it here and put it somewhere, and maybe write a letter online if you could, or something along those lines. Fine. Let's do the last little shtickle over here. Before people go to the oil kivrei aves noigel litbar, the minig is you go, or even to the kivrei aves, which is not necessarily of a rebbe, could even be of a parent. So then the minig is you try to go to the mikvah before the lishtais, and also to drink, but not to eat. So our minig is that we try not to eat before we go to the oil, even if you're going later in the day, but you do bedafke drink. Okay, and we know that the Rebbe did that. Now, what's the vart over here? So the reason would be because The reason would be because there is an inyan we said before about Doida Shala Mason, that when you go to ask Mason to do things for you, so it's not such a good thing. It's against the Torah. And one of the things that they would do, and Allah describes, is that they would fast and do other things next to the cave of a person who passed. So to show that we're not doing that, we dafka drink. Yeah, but you also want to have a little bit of fasting. So we don't eat, but we do drink. Okay, so let's leave that simply for that. But that's what we do, and that's our minhag, that we drink, but we don't eat. Okay, you know what? Let's finish this today. Yeah, let's finish another 3 paragraphs. Let's finish the whole thing. So now we're up to Sif Yudal. We're on page Tafnun Zayim. Be'erev Rosh Hashanah nagu kulam lis'anois ad achar mincha. Erev Rosh Hashanah, people have a minhag that they fast till after mincha. Now, our minhag is that we do not do that. How do we know that our minhag is that we do not do that? Because I just said, the Rebbe used to go to the Oyel Erev Rosh Hashanah. And what do you do before you go to the Oyel? You drink. So we know that it's not something that we do. Okay, and as we said before, fasting is not something that we promote these days as a method of avodah or getting close to Hashem anyways anymore, because what ends up happening is you have people that they just get too tired and they put their head down and they go to sleep anyway. So it's not beneficial to the avodah you're trying to do if it just knocks you out. Okay. Some people, however, do have the minhag that they fast till after mincha. That's when they would for sure taste something, meaning even they do not fast till Rosh Hashanah itself. Why not? You're not supposed to go into a Yom Tov fasting. We did have it this year, where Asara B'Tevis was on Friday, and the first thing you do is you make kiddush on a big, beautiful, hefty glass of wine, and it's always a challenge for some people. But it's the winter; it's a short day. But imagine, so okay, but it's not a good thing. We don't like to go into a thing fasting, which is why anytime you have to move a fast up, let's say fast falls out on Shabbos, for the one time that it could of Asara B'Tevis, I think. So what do? You move it up to Thursday. No, then actually you push it off. Let's say Tanis Esther. Tanis Esther, you move up to Thursday. Why not Friday? Because you don't like to fast on Friday. It's not a good thing. You go into a Shabbos like you're grumpy and grouchy. It's not a good thing. Hangry, right? What do they call it? Hangry. Fine. But on Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah, you should spend the whole day learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. I believe our inyan is to do a lot of tehillim, even Erev Rosh Hashanah. I think that's what Friedrich Rebbe used to tell Bachrim, is that they should do tehillim. And for sure, if the type of tshuva that you need to do is between you and your friends, that's definitely something you should be doing more of. During on this day. Okay, I kind of asked a few times already that just shouldn't be here, yeah, because it's just disturbing more and more. Perpetuating. But when it comes to interpersonal things, you should not wait till Yom Kippur. You should take care of it before Rosh Hashanah. You should push it up as much as you can and ask for mechila then. In other words, like this. Out of Yom Kippur, you have to already be done, basically. So start earlier. Why are you waiting till out of Yom Kippur to ask for forgiveness? You did something wrong, you have to ask for forgiveness. Do it before Rosh Hashanah. And this way you start your new year already in a good way. But these are things that have to do between you and people, yeah? Between you and Hashem, you have to do tshuva, obviously, as well. Okay, we'll get back to Tazayin in a second.
We're learning that.
Wait one second. I just want to finish, so hold the thought, if you don't mind. I want to make sure we beat the clock, because I have to do Chazorah and the test and everything. Sif Tezvav, Mechabsin, so the meaning is like this. Mechabsim, Umistaprim, Be'erev Rosh Hashanah, L'kavod Yom Tov. The halacha is you should wash yourself, take a bath. For those that in those days they didn't do it so often. Nowadays we do it obviously much more consistently. But you should try to take a bath or shower and take a haircut at Rosh Hashanah. And why do you do that? Because it's a Yom Tov, the Kavod Yom Tov. There is a minhag lechatchila. If you could do it before Chatzos Hayom is best. Better not to do it too close. Now, in addition to that, you also try to go to the mikvah. And we do wear Big Day Shabbos on Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, in other words, we don't. It's not together with it being, for some people they focus a lot more on the seriousness of the day. But even for them, right, which we focus on other parts of it. But even for them, they should also wear Big Day Shabbos. Why? To show that we are sure in the chesed of Hashem, that our judgment, our mishpat, will be in a positive light, in a good way. This is similar to why we don't blow shofar at Erev Rosh Hashanah and other things that we do. We don't bench the Chodesh before, because we're showing that we're so sure that Hashem is going to give us a good year that we're celebrating. Yeah, imagine you come to, you ever see I don't know if you ever see it, but if you ever went to court for jury duty or something, so you always see the people that have to go to court that when they're out on the street, they look like maybe thugs, but when they're inside, they're dressed very fancy with a tie and everything, and it never fits. It's always ill-fitted. But they're trying to show that they're coming like a mensch because they want to give a good impression. So that is that. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, you want to give a good impression. You're coming to the Eibishter showing that we're confident we're going to win. We know, we're coming in our best. We're putting our best foot forward, as they say. Okay, let's finish the last one here. Tezayin. There is a meaning that we do Ataras Nadarim and Erev Rosh Hashanah. Now, Ataras Nadarim means that you're trying to undo your Nadarim that you may have made. This is not things that you did between you and another person. If you owe someone money or if you whatever, that doesn't get taken away by Ataras Nadarim. Ataras Nadarim is between you and things that you did with Hashem. Eizan Nagas, Toivos, and mitzvahs, things like that we say. The truth is that you only really need 3 people. Yeah? How do you do Ataras Nadarim in front of a bestin? A bestin is 3 people. You don't need a whole crowd. However, our minig, based on the way the Frierdiker Rebbe writes it, is v'toiv sheyehei eidah shlema. It's better, and the Rebbe writes this in Ayim Yom, it's best if you could have a full minyan, which is the way we do it. We try to, if you're a shliach that lives in the middle of whatever, and you're not going to have a minyan, so then you don't. You do with you, the bacher that came to be your chazan, and maybe you chop another 2 people, before Rosh Hashanah, you have 2 people sit down and you do it over there. Well, and you could do this all the way till Yom Kippur, I believe, but you try to do it before Rosh Hashanah. Actually, I'm not sure about that. I take that back. I'm not sure. I think you could, but could be wrong. I'm not sure because the whole point is you want to do it first. It could be. I'm not sure. It could be. I don't remember offhand. It could be. But over here, an interesting thing is that you could use relatives, right? Usually a bestin is not allowed to be relatives. For this, you could use relatives. And our minig is also that we do it dafke, if you could, after Shachris on Erev Rosh Hashanah and still wearing your talis and tefillin. And some people have a minig that they only use someone who already did Hataras Nadarim to do Hataras Nadarim for you. But we know, it's I don't know, but it's not our minig. We know that Rebbe didn't do that, so it's fine. What? Right, so the first 2 guys are going to be challenged. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I don't know how exactly that works. Maybe it's only the rabbi and the chashuv people would do that. But either way, the Rebbe was not makbid in it. It seems like so. It's not something that we do. Now, varemes, and why do you do that? Why do we do Ataras Nadarim then? Because it says lo yachel dvarei kechol. This is from the Torah, right, a couple of weeks ago, where it talks about doing Nadarim, and it says lo yachel dvarei kol, that his word shouldn't stick. It shouldn't be a valid neder, and that's seifei tevis Elul. The last letters of those words are Elul. Now, here's an important part that you should all remember, yeah? If someone doesn't understand what they're saying, B'lashon HaKodesh, Yemar B'lashon Ashkenaz, you should do it in Yiddish, in those days it was, or Yacheres, or any other language, K'moshe Hu Mevin. Hataras Nadarim is not a tefillah. It's not something inspirational. It's a very factual type of legal statement. So if it comes to Hataras Nadarim and you see people that they're breaking their teeth, they have no idea what they're saying, and you ask them after if they know what they said, they have no idea. They're very excited that they did a tefillah. No, it's not a tefillah. It's a very straightforward type of thing that you're doing, like a legal statement. So you have to know what you're saying. So if you have a choice between doing it in Hebrew and you don't know anything what you're saying, or English, do it in English. Or another solution is prepare before. Here you have a couple of weeks. Take English siddur, English chumash. It's not English machzor. It's not very complicated. It's 1 or 2 paragraphs, not very challenging. And you go through it quickly and make sure you know the taichin, you know what you're saying. Practice it so you don't have everyone waiting for you for 20 minutes. And this way you'll do it the best way. Now, women officially, they also make nadarim. So what happens over here? So usually, right. Usually the husband has in mind that he's doing it for his wife also, but even if he doesn't, it doesn't seem like, for some reason, it doesn't seem like it's a meaning that they do it. But as I gave this, yeah. Good question. You should be able to get the translation of everything. It shouldn't be too challenging. It's not that long or that hard. I guess overall, if you know the basic of what you're saying, the theme of what you're saying, not just that I know I'm doing Ataras Nadarim, but if you know actually what it says, the words that come out by mistake, on purpose. So if you know all that, then it seems to be that should be good enough, I assume. Okay, let me stop the recording and I'll tell you the schedule before we go to break. Oh, this is the first Siman, by the way. So